Well, we are going to find out with the elections looming, and the bailout itself is predicated on the result of the elections, is what I infer from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's remarks and quotations on Twitter that the Trump administration wants to see how the elections go first before dispersing these funds.
What we're going to do can change from day to day with President Trump. I believe he's strongly committed to Milei. There's a personal connection and ideological connection.
Similar to that with Bolsonaro, isn't it?
With Bolsonaro, with Bukele, with Orban, these new right hardcore figures. Milei has been very helpful at the UN and the OAS and other fora to the United States. And I think just Trump sees him as, one of the team.
Speaking of Bolsonaro, what do you think American relations with Brazil will look like? President Trump met with President Lula of Brazil at the United Nations and said that they had a great chat and that he's a wonderful guy. Do you think relations will improve?
Pardon me if I'm suffering from a bit of whiplash here, because we had been going through a very, very difficult period with Brazil. You start off, of course, with the broad tariffs worldwide being imposed, but Brazil got an extra hit, taking them up to 50%, an enormous tariff. And this was clearly related to the fact that former President Bolsonaro was on trial for involvement in a coup plotting and in a scenario that was not that different from what occurred in the U.S. Capitol some time ago. And you also had Bolsonaro's son, Eduardo, basically camping out in the U.S. and pulling all the levers amongst the conservatives.
Now, he now faces charges as well, if I'm not mistaken.
So the news is saying that he's been indicted for interfering in a legal proceeding. But what's happening now, Trump had this 39-second encounter with Lula at the UN and, good chemistry. What this means, I don't know. Some of it may be that we're finding that Brazil isn't quite the pushover that Trump and company thought it might be. You compare
so Trump doesn't hold all the cards?
Exactly. You compare it with Panama, where there was, at the very beginning of the Trump administration, this, loud, insistent demand that the Chinese be kicked out of any involvement with the Panama Canal infrastructure. And the Panamanians went out of their way to accommodate as best they can. But Brazil's not Panama. Brazil's vastly bigger. And yes, 50% tariffs will hurt Brazil. But much of Brazil's trade is not with the United States. Brazil is a giant producer of agricultural products, natural resource products like iron ore, etc., petroleum.
Yeah.
And they don't sell them. We compete with them in a lot. They sell to the other parts of the world, including China. So we don't have that kind of leverage that we have with a small country like Panama, just where we can pound the table and say, do what we want. And maybe it's beginning to dawn that a different approach may be required.
By the way, speaking of China and agricultural sales, the Argentines, the moment that they got this promise from Trump of a bailout, signed a soybean accord with the Chinese that is hurting American farmers. And that is raising hackles in Washington.
Well, Argentina has a history of selling its wheat where it needs to. You may recall back during the Carter administration when we imposed an embargo on the Soviet Union because of the Afghanistan invasion, and we stopped selling wheat. And back then, the Soviets needed a lot of wheat. Well, we stopped selling, and the Argentines backfilled. This despite at the time having a far-right military junta. So if they're doing that, business is business. And of course, the Argentines need foreign currency, and they will sell to the Chinese. One does see some reports that a currency swap standby arrangement they have with China may be wound down as part of the price for our bailout. We'll have to see how all that works out.
Final topic, Venezuela, which you know well. What is going on with Trump's gunboat diplomacy? Should we take it seriously? Is he, in fact, trying to enact regime change? Or is this simply a lot of bluster and hot air?
Well, the term gunboat diplomacy really understates it. You've got destroyers, frigates, you have F-35 stationed in Puerto Rico, you have a Marine Expeditionary Unit. This is a pretty remarkable assembling of military might in the Southern Caribbean. What is he going to do with it? He is characterizing Venezuela as a terrorist state. And he's claiming that drug trafficking, in effect, is terrorism, and therefore, the gloves are off. We can do what we want. It's a national security concern. What we've seen so far is what 3 or 4, drug boats have been blown out of the water.
Alleged drug boats.
We'll never know because they've been blown out. But at the same time, is that all he's going to do? This mighty armada just to stop some drug ships from moving around? The question arises: is this the beginning of some effort at regime change, or maybe not?
So, my question to you is: let's say Trump is sinking in the polls, and he decides, "I need a splendid little war." Would it be splendid, or would we be embarking into something that could prove more treacherous than we might anticipate?
What could go wrong? Lots. First of all, I don't think we're going to go from blowing up a few launches to a full-scale invasion of Venezuela. Trump has various options to raise the temperature. They can start to do attacks by drone or missile on alleged infrastructure belonging to the drug cartels present in Venezuela. They can even go so far as to either, try to seize, Maduro, the president of Venezuela, some kind of attack on the presidential palace. You can come up with all sorts of scenarios. What you can't come up with is a guarantee it'll all work.
The problem is, if you evict Maduro from power, then what replaces him?
There's a long line of equally unsavory people that are as part of his regime. I think one can come up with a happier scenario in which the military realized that if we don't oust him and come up with some kind of new relationship with the opposition, that we could see further pain being inflicted on us. But what happens, very hard to tell. And you could have a scenario in which, we huff and we puff, but the house doesn't get blown down, in which we go after Maduro, but it's not successful. We go after Maduro, and he's replaced by equally difficult interlocutors. Or we could find that chaos ensues in Caracas, a city of millions of people, huge slums, has had kind of explosive events in the past where vast riots, etc. So anything is possible. We do know that Trump's not a big fan of boots on the ground, and is there an element of bluff here? Hard to say, but I would be skeptical that the idea that we will follow this to its ultimate consequences no matter what.
Final question. Say we do exert some kind of substantial military force beyond gunboat diplomacy. The United States' reputation in this region is a mixed one. Would we're going in militarily revive older antipathies to America about American imperialism, or do you think it's just, again, would that just be a passing rhetoric?
What's certainly true is the current government of Venezuela is not loved by very many. It's failed comprehensively economically. It's corrupt. It's authoritarian. A lot of people will not be shedding tears if it goes, but Yes, for others, there will be the sense, the imperialists have struck again.
The Yankees have
Yeah,
returned.
I mean, there's a lot of history there. But, if these things are clean and fast, a slam dunk, all is forgiven, but no guarantees for that.
Richard, we'll have to have you back on and discuss these events in a few weeks when more has transpired.
It would be a real pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.